Welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast.
Hello there from Bedford. How are you all? Welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast, which is brought to you by Kraken, the best place to buy, sell, and trade Bitcoin. It's got the best set of tools for traders out there. So how are you all? Are you all well? I'm just about to submit my defense in the CSW case. Read through it all. It's looking pretty strong. Feeling pretty confident about it now, having seen the great work by my lawyers. Also, by the time you listen to this, I'm going to be far away on holiday. I'm taking a well-needed rest, but don't worry. I've got a whole stack of shows ready to be published while I'm away. And we're going to start this batch off with an interview with Pieter Wuille, which I think might be his first full solo podcast interview, which is pretty damn cool. But before that, let's hear from my amazing sponsors who make this all happen. So firstly, today we're going to talk to you about Dropbit. So many of you have downloaded the app now. I get so much feedback. I get DMs, I get tweets, I get emails, I get people telling me they've downloaded it. And I've even sent a few sats to some of you to buy some beers. And not one person's actually got in touch and said they don't like it, which I think is pretty cool. And do you want to know why that is? It's because it's a really awesome Bitcoin mobile wallet. These guys are crushing innovation. You can text Bitcoin, you can tweet Bitcoin, you basically use it like a Venmo for Bitcoin. And they're also hard at work on a bunch of new features. I even messaged them yesterday. I wanted to catch up with them before I went away on holiday. And they were like, leave us alone, Pete. We're busy. We're building shit. Go away. Go and have a holiday. We'll catch up when we get back. So all I can tell you is that I know what they're working on. And it's pretty badass. So they've got some cool stuff coming. But if you haven't downloaded the app, come on. Go and check it out. It is without doubt the best mobile Bitcoin wallet out there. Just do a search for Dropbit on Twitter. You'll see the comments. It's available for iPhone and Android. So if you want to test it out, head over to dropbit.app, which is dropbit.app. That is dropbit.app, which is dropbit.app. Also, today's show is brought to you by Accounting, the best crypto tax calculator on the market, and they've got some news. Dun, dun, dun. Yes, their new mobile app is now available. You can now manage your Accounting account on the move. Whether you're in a queue at Starbucks waiting for a Frappuccino, whether you're on the bus, whether you're in the sky, in a plane, using Wi-Fi, in a flying chair, wherever you are, you can now use Accounting on the move. It's got so many cool features. You can easily track your portfolio. You can get insights into your investments and where your coins are located. You can get live prices, and you can see historical portfolio history. It's very, very cool. It complements the website really well. It's available on the iPhone and Android. Just search for Accounting, which is Accointing. That's in the Android and iPhone app stores by searching for Accounting, which is Accointing. Okay, so on to the show today. And you know what? What a show, man. I've got one of the most important people in Bitcoin, one of the most important developers, one of the most respected people in Bitcoin, and probably one of the hardest names to pronounce in Bitcoin, even though he's told me I keep getting it wrong. And you know what? I bet some of you haven't even heard from this guy on a podcast before. I think he was part of one show before, but he's never done a full solo podcast. So when I was out in San Francisco, I got a chance to sit down with Pieter Wuille. I hope I got that right. But I got a chance to sit down with him, talk about Bitcoin dev. And you know what? Peter's got the third most commits to the Bitcoin codebase, and he is the man who brought segregated witness to Bitcoin. So he is an absolute badass. I feel very honored to have him on the show. And you know what, in this one, we go right back to the very start of Peter's involvement with Bitcoin, from trying to crack Hal Finney's puzzle to starting Blockstream and going full-time on Bitcoin dev. I also got to find out about some of the projects he's working on now and how he sees the future for Bitcoin. And as a little bonus at the end, had one of the interns from Blockstream was there. So I got a 5 minutes with him at the end, asking what it's like for him working alongside Peter, developing Bitcoin. So this is a rare interview, and it's a really fucking cool one. I'm really proud of it. So I hope you all enjoy it as much as I do. As ever, if you've got any questions about it, just email me. It's hello@whatbitcoindid.com. As I noted though at the start, I'm off on holiday now. I'm taking an extended 3-week break. I'm going to check my phone and Twitter as little as possible, so you won't have me annoying you on Twitter for a few weeks as much as normal. But if you do want to get in touch, my email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com. I apologise if I take some time to get back to you. But anyway, on to the interview. As I said, I hope you enjoy it. It's really cool to get Pieter on the podcast. So I'm the opposite of you. I'm like the complete opposite of you for Bitcoin, but what people have enjoyed with my show is that when technical people come on and I try and get them to explain things so they can understand. So we're going to try and do that today.
Okay.
So I think the starting point needs to be, why do you keep misspelling our name?
Sorry?
Why do you keep misspelling our name?
I don't know. I guess we both have hard names to spell. I don't think yours is that hard.
You've added an I in. Why have you added an I into Peter?
Because if in Dutch, if it didn't have an I, you would pronounce it Peter.
So I would be Peter.
Yeah.
But I'm Peter.
Yeah. Well, I was living in Zurich, where people speak German, or something that some people call German. And I'd go into a Starbucks, people would ask me what my name is in English, and I'd say Peter, because that's this, and they think I'm speaking English, so they write down Peter,
Yeah.
and then afterwards they'd call out Peter, which is how you pronounce that in German.
Right, okay. But Peter's the
Peter,
correct. But
yeah.
we're the same, basically.
Yeah, okay, there's some differences, I guess.
It's just an I, that little selfish I. And how do you pronounce your surname? Because I've discussed you in interviews before, and I've got your name wrong. And then even other people, like, I think it was even Andrew said, well, I'm actually not sure. How, is it Wuille or Will or...
Wuille.
Wuille. Not one person I've interviewed has ever said that.
Yeah. At Scaling Bitcoin, where in Hong Kong, right before I presented the segregated witness proposal, Neha introduced me as, I don't know, Pieter Wuille or something. So I started my talk with, "Hi, I'm Pieter Wuille," apparently. And then later there was some thread on Reddit where people were discussing how to pronounce my last name. And then someone linked to that as evidence about how it should be pronounced. So I made a historical mistake there.
Right, say it again. Wuille.
Pieter Wuille.
Pieter Wuille. Okay, so not one person I've met has pronounced it like that. So now I know. Now I can correct people. All right. Well, look, thank you for coming on. I know you don't do many interviews. I only found two. I found the one that was like a radio show you were part of, and I found like a CoinDesk written interview.
Right. That's right. I did one with Alyssa.
So I'm glad to get you on because I've read quite a few bits about you. I've talked to a few people about you. A lot of people highly compliment you. And you apparently, I think it's Nicolas Dorier said this, you have the most complete knowledge of the Bitcoin source code of anyone.
I doubt that's still the case, but
At some point.
Perhaps.
All right. So we're gonna dig into a few things. But in that article, there was a lot written about the fact that you're quite, I don't want to say quiet, but you keep out a lot of the drama and the politics.
I try to.
Yeah, and it came up with that quote that I've read many times, that cypherpunks write code.
I agree with that. I don't know. I think it's better to try to make progress with things than picking fights.
And jumping in the middle. Are you a cypherpunk? Would you consider yourself one?
I like writing code.
So do you identify with it? Do you identify with the history
to an
of cypherpunks?
extent, I think I like the idea of how cryptography can... Nah, I can't say anything useful about that, really.
You just like writing code. And you're still hands-on coder. You haven't at Blockstream got into middle management now.
No.
Doing HR reviews.
Sometimes I interview people, but no, I'm really happy how a very large part of my job is research and development into Bitcoin.
And you fundamentally love the challenge of writing code.
Writing code is one part, but a lot of my time the past years has been going into bigger proposals. I mean, SegWit was one of them. BIP Taproot is one. There's a number of other things I'm working on that aren't so much about the code as it is about proposals and ideas for development.
Okay, well, I think if you don't do many interviews, it would be good to just do a little bit of digging into the past and the history, let people know
Sure.
a little bit. So, in as much detail as you want to give, can you tell me the journey up until the Halfini puzzle?
Up until the Halfini puzzle, okay.
Because that was your kind of starting point with Bitcoin, right?
Right, that is what got me to look at the source code for the first time. Or maybe not even. So I think I discovered Bitcoin when people were discussing it on an IRC channel on Freenode. It was the Haskell Blah IRC channel, which is a channel for enthusiasts of the programming language Haskell, but in a split-off channel where it is not allowed to talk about Haskell. And someone brought it up there late 2010. Was a very appealing idea that just a piece of software could define a currency. But reading back the logs of that time, I had absolutely no clue how it worked. It's embarrassing. And then I think I discovered, though, the software that existed. I had a GPU in my desktop at the time, which I had bought with the intention of playing some video games, which I never got around to, really. But apparently could mine quite a bit of Bitcoin, which, by the way, was 20 cents per Bitcoin at the time. Pretty sure I sold all of those.
No. Do you know how many you sold? You're going to tell me something like annoying, like thousands.
Yeah. So
who would know, though, right? I mean, I doubt you sat there. Well, you obviously didn't sit there and think, "Oh, that's going to go to $20,000."
No, I didn't think it would go to $1. I didn't think it would go to $10. I didn't think it would go to $1,000, and I certainly didn't think it would go to 10,000. So,
but here we are. We're stabilizing over 10,000 at the moment. But it's not going to go to 100,000, is it?
No, definitely not. So anyway, at the time, so that was interesting. I don't know, I started talking to all my friends about it, and they were like, yeah, we'll go play with your Monopoly money or something. Yeah. And then I think, together with a friend of mine, we built a few machines to do mining. This was in early 2011. Very small scale, I think. We had 6 GPUs or something. But it was a lot of fun to play around with a half-broken software that existed for this at the time. And I think we expected to break even in 3 months when we started this, maybe in February 2011. And I remember we succeeded to the day. In 3 months we broke even.
Nice.
Except the hash rate had gone up like a factor 3 faster than we expected, but so had the exchange rate. So
not a problem.
It was pure coincidence. Really, our guess was completely off, but it turned out to be a couple months later, we just sold the hardware because, electricity costs in Belgium aren't that low, so it just wasn't worth it anymore.
When did the How puzzle come into play?
Yeah, that must have been around the same time, somewhere in the first months of 2011.
And what was the puzzle? I read about it, but... Yeah.
Oh, it was Halfini posting, here's a private key. With this associated address, it has 5 Bitcoin on it or something, which was not much at the time. And this was on the Bitcoin Talk forum, which I think at the time was still hosted on bitcoin.org. And the challenge was, if you can take the coins, they're yours. And given that at the time, really the only published Bitcoin software was the original client, at the time just called Bitcoin, what later became Bitcoin Core. and it didn't have any functionality for importing or exporting private keys. So I had already been looking at a code a bit. I think I had looked. There was this discussion once about how to speed up block generation. I think it was Slush who was wondering about that. So I'd been looking into that for a bit. So that was probably before that puzzle. And then, so I started writing this patch for importing keys, and I ran into a number of challenges, things I needed some refactorings in the code. So
You never solved the puzzle, though. Someone else did.
I know my Kern solved it first.
Really?
And I think he sent the coins back to Helfini.
What a good guy.
He was already working on Bitcoin J at the time, so he had, I guess.
And I guess it was like a gradual process, but you obviously started to tinker more and more with Bitcoin, learn more about it. When was the transition where you kind of started to realize, okay, this is all I'm going to be doing? Can you even pinpoint it?
Well, yes. I mean, I guess the day I joined Blockstream.
Okay.
But before that, so I discovered Bitcoin. All of this was when I was working on my PhD, and it started taking a significant portion of my free time looking at Bitcoin things, and I had to dial that down when I was writing my dissertation. But then after I got my degree, I didn't quite know what to do. Bitcoin was super interesting, so I spent a couple months really just doing Bitcoin things. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do after. Then I joined Google, but I found the appeal of working on open source software and contributing to Bitcoin much more interesting than my job there. And then when the opportunity came to join Blockstream, that was, I guess, the right thing to do.
And obviously, we all, when we first discover Bitcoin, we all have that moment where we're like, this can't really be real, or I can't really take this seriously, But over time, you start to accept it. You start to see some of the beauty of it. At what point did you realize this isn't just silly monopoly money, or are you still not there?
No, I think I've come to terms that it's a bit more than that. When was that? I don't think I can pinpoint an exact point in time. It was a gradual...
You got no doubt now, right? I mean, you can have doubts about survival, but I don't believe you've got any doubts about whether it should survive and what its benefits are.
No, of course not. But I don't know. I try to keep a realistic. I think it is better for the ecosystem if we treat Bitcoin as something that is still fragile and might not make it. I mean, it all depends on what your success conditions are, but to me at least, they include usefulness over a long period of time in the future, and that's far from guaranteed to be the case. But the technology is so interesting, I'm going to try everything I can to make it do.
What do you think is the biggest threats are to it for you as a, say, developer, as a coder?
Isn't so much as a developer, but I think if it turns out that the only way to use Bitcoin is in a very regulated environment where only businesses with clear and open books and KYC, AML everywhere are able to interact with it, then I fear it won't serve the purpose it was, or it won't achieve the best of its potential.
But
and that's possibly a scenario that's worse than it just dying off and being replaced with something else. So,
But I can still send you Bitcoin today. You can send it back to me
yep,
without KYC.
yep, absolutely.
And that would be very hard to enforce it. You can enforce it on the exchange level pretty well, but at a wallet level, it's very hard.
Yep, and I think that is fine. Like my hope is that a bigger internal Bitcoin economy grows at some point, where businesses accept Bitcoin and people accept Bitcoin and they keep it in Bitcoin for extended periods of time rather than converting to fiat at every stage. And even if exchanges are regulated in such an environment,
I guess it's the on-ramp and off-ramp, which gives them his biggest exposure to KYC.
yes. And at a high level, I think a goal for Bitcoin should be avoiding the need for regulation. And by that I mean, and regardless of your opinion on what kind of regulation is necessary and how much is necessary, its goal is protecting customers, protecting businesses, or whatever it's trying to protect. If we can, using cryptography and computer science, build solutions that remove the need for those things, that would be a very good scenario. Like if say, things like provable reserves, even for completely centralized sites, if there was a way to integrate proofs of reserve, that would alleviate the need for certain kinds of audits. And I think that would be a great advantage on its own. Clearly, I would prefer not to have centralized custodials that pose a systemic risk. But like there are smaller goals that are fairly interesting that you can do just because a currency is purely digital. There are things you can do with that don't otherwise exist, right? I cannot prove to you in what's called a transferable proof that I have a certain number of dollars in reserve for you. There's no way I can prove that except by trying to show you a bank statement and hoping you trust my bank and I trust my bank and whatever. But with Bitcoin, I can do this. They're just data, so you can make statements about it and you can prove things. And I think that's really cool. Haven't seen that much use for this, but maybe we'll see that.
But the encroachment of regulators to the point that it, I guess, removes all anonymity. It just loses, I don't know, it loses its excitement. It loses its kind of sexiness.
It does. I mean, for currency to be useful, it needs to be fungible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if the only way to use it is always by in revealing your identity, and then this property goes away.
But again, as we said, look, that's a problem on the on and off ramp with exchanges.
Yes.
We don't have it wallet to wallet right now. Hopefully with Lightning, we'll have even more anonymity. And
certain types of anonymity,
yes. Does this... Because one of the questions I had for you is, like, how do you prioritize what you're working on? There's obviously, I guess, like any job, I've got a to-do list with 100 things on, of shows I want to record, people I want to speak to, other things I want to do. I'm sure you've got a to-do list of hundreds of things you want to do. How do you choose what you want to work on?
The answer to that is pretty much driven by what is cool to work on. And it's hard because I feel I'm continuously not blocking things or not making progress for things that should be priorities, but there's just this really cool project I'm working on, so somehow I get absorbed into that and work on that, and then I switch over to something else.
But what is cool to you?
It depends. I mean, there's so many different things I work on. So right now, a lot of my time is going to a project called Miniscript, which is about making the Bitcoin scripting language more accessible. In short, the Bitcoin scripting language is hard to analyze, and you'll find few people who do non-trivial things with it. Part of that is because there just isn't all that much you can do with it. It's pretty much combinations of sets of keys that need to sign off, or timeouts, lock times, and hash locks, and a couple other things. But even if for a particular application you have use for a particular script or a certain policy which you're encoding as a script, that doesn't make it easy to use. Like you'll still need to write custom software to sign for these things, to have a protocol on agreeing with multiple participants to decide on what this transaction is going to be. And with Miniscript, we essentially define an analyzable subset of the Bitcoin scripting language that can do pretty much everything, but it's obvious, like given such a script, it is obvious what it's doing. And what's more, anyone who understands Miniscript will be able to sign for any Miniscript. So one of the things this could potentially enable is, well, you have, say, Lightning. Lightning uses custom scripts that they have developed, but now I want to use a multi-sig wallet with that. In the traditional approach, and I'm not all that involved in Lightning development, but my understanding is that this would pretty much require like rewriting a whole bunch of bolts and redoing a lot of the development work on the protocols around it. But if this was done with Miniscript, you could just take the policy that Lightning requires and plug in the multisig policy, like replace one of the keys with a multisig policy, and everything would still work. So, and I think this is something that's been overlooked for a long time in development, that smart contracts, as people call them, isn't just about the functionality that you have in the blockchain consensus rules itself, but also all the software around it to make use of it. So this is something I'm working on currently. I hope to publish something more about soon.
And how much of the work do you do, and how much of the work do other people do to support you? Like, are you the big ideas guy and you outsource it to this guy and say, come on? Sorry, what was your name? Sandhid. Do you want to just outsource it to him and say, do this? So with Miniscript, we're I guess now 3 people: Andrew, Pulstra, Sanket, and me. This project started about a year ago with a desire to be able to integrate much larger sets of multisig in the scripting language, which is obviously possible, but nobody does it because the only standard construction that everyone uses only supports up to 15 keys. Right.
So, yeah, it's a collaboration. We've like a whole lot of time has gone in back and forth in incremental improvements and complete rewrites and designs of the system over the past couple of months. I think we have it now fleshed out, and Sanket and Andrew are working on a Rust implementation. I'm working on a C++ implementation for integration in Bitcoin Core. It's a team effort.
Okay, and when will and how will that be implemented? Does that require a soft fork?
Nope, not at all. This is just about using the existing scripting language as it exists today. It's just about, so this would interact with PSBT, the transaction decision and signing interchange format that Andrew Chow developed last year. Yeah, what this would allow is it depends on how people do things, but it could be possible that just one of the participants in a transaction understands the full policy, and now he just adds information to a PSBT file. Oh, I understand this. This means you need to sign and you need to sign. Okay, and then gets into the file. You give it to those participants. Their software doesn't even understand Miniscript or doesn't even understand what a policy involved is. So there's some complications with change detection there, but ignoring that, they just sign, get it back to the guy who understands the thing, and he constructs a transaction based on it. And so my hope is that if this gets integrated into a couple pieces of software, and this will be a long time thing because it's a different way of interacting with transactions, but like would enable this composability where you have, oh, this application requires this kind of policy, but I have this kind of wallet which actually has its policy on its own. Maybe it's a 2 of 3 2FA based wallet. Like why can't things like Green Blockstream Green wallet, which is a 2 of 2 or 2 of 3 with a timeout and a 2FA service. That on itself is a very useful policy. Why can't you use, for example, you have a company whose cold storage is protected by a 4 of 5 of some of the executives of the company or something. I don't know if people do that, but it's a fairly reasonable thing to do. But now one of those executives actually has decent but relatively complex 2FA setup. Why is he restricted? Like, why can't he use that policy inside the protection of those funds? And if things were Miniscript enabled, this would be trivial. You just plug in the one policy into the other policy, and all software would know how to, like, wouldn't even care about the fact that this is now not a standard multi-sig construction anymore.
Are there any dangers when you build something like this that some kind of unknown bug could do something catastrophic and lock up a whole bunch of Bitcoin?
Well, so we have review for and many eyes. It's hard to talk about something that we haven't published all that much about. But do
you worry though? Do you?
Not really. In that, there's no need to rush things, right? Mm-hmm. We things should be adopted when people feel comfortable with the level of review and analysis they've gotten. And I think the design of Miniscript makes it very easy to reason about some of its properties. Language, it involves a simple programming language itself, actually, and there's automated reasoning you do about, oh, this kind of expression has these properties. Like, for example, this one will always put a 1 on the stack and not just a non-zero number, and then there's this other construction that requires such an input, so as a result we can reason that it's correct or something like that.
Slow and steady.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think, for a lot of the things we work on, we try not to have actual deadlines. Like you work on a project and you make progress, but then something else takes over, and that's okay. Something else, it goes into the background, and a couple of months later you have better ideas and you get new eyes on it, and you iterate again, and you've learned so much more, and by not having a desire to publish things before they're done, you, I think, achieve much better quality. Of course, it also takes a lot more time, but I don't know that it's a kind of design approach that's worked well, where you, I guess, sort of overkill part of the engineering, like where you don't just design for good enough, but make it the best it can be. And now some of its concerns are just completely off the table. You've completely solved that problem, or to an extent.
It's a strange position as well, whereby whilst you're employed for Blockstream, and you could spend all your time building Blockstream products because they are a company, you are also really spending most of your time working on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's a very strange, unusual thing, though. We don't see this in most of life.
I think it's... No, you don't. But it's fairly common in open source development, I think, where I think the Linux kernel is a perfect example where many of the contributors to the Linux kernel are people who are employed by companies, but their job is contributing to the Linux kernel. And I think this is a very good model where companies that have an interest in the success of this technology pay people to contribute to it on a fairly standalone, autonomous way. So, and I think we're starting to see, well, we have been seeing the same thing in Bitcoin for a while now. Like, there's a bunch of companies who are just like, yep, one or two developers that will pay.
And you all talk to each other.
Yeah.
And you talk to chain code, right?
Of course. Yeah, there's, I think Anthony Towns works for Zappo.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of people at Chain Code. A number of people at DG.
So one of the
A
questions...
number of people I have no idea who they work for, and it's fine too. Ideas should be valued like based on their merits.
Next up, I talked to Peter more about building Bitcoin, but before that, I got a message from my amazing show sponsors. All right, so firstly, Kraken, the mighty Kraken. Easily the best place to buy, sell, trade Bitcoin with the most comprehensive suite of tools available for traders out there. And they also had an announcement this week. Kraken has acquired my buddy Dan Held's company, Interchange. He and Clark Moody are joining the Kraken team, adding to the other recent acquisitions, which is pretty cool. I'm going to get Dan on the show soon to talk about this. I want to know what it's like selling to Kraken and what his new role is going to be, so we'll be doing that soon. And this is Kraken. We already know they are the best for security in the entire industry, but they are also building the best and most comprehensive trading options available in the market. You know they've got Kraken.com, which is the best place to buy, sell, and trade. They've got margin trading with up to 5x leverage. You've also got futures, indices. You've got the Kraken OTC desk for large trades with private and personalized services. You've got Crypto Watch, where you can trade on multiple exchanges from a single platform. And for you advanced traders out there, they've got the best account management program in the industry. Seriously, if you're a trader, there is no better place to trade. So join me in supporting Kraken, the best exchange in the world. That is Kraken.com, which is Kraken.com. Head over to Kraken.com, which is Kraken.com. Also, today's show is brought to you by BlockFi, and I'm imminently about to get my next interest payment because I've got one of their Bitcoin interest accounts. I think this is my 5th payment. My Bitcoin is working for me with BlockFi every month. And with a BlockFi interest account, you can also earn interest on your Bitcoin, but your Ether and your GUSD. And also with BlockFi, you've got access to crypto-backed loans too. You can take out a loan against your Bitcoin, Ether, or Litecoin. And you should definitely go and check out my recent interview with BlockFi CEO Zach Prince and Jeremy Welch from Casa discussing their recent partnership. So if you're interested in trying it out, I always say you've got to do your own research, but head over to blockfi.com, which is BLOCKFI.com. That is blockfi.com, which is BLOCKFI.com. One of the questions I often ask people, and it came originally from an Adam Back interview that he did, was, it's always an interesting answer as well. I should have done it at the start, but it's so simple. Like, what is Bitcoin?
What is Bitcoin?
It's because every answer is different.
It's the currency of the internet.
Oh, you went easy. You went easy. Yeah, okay. But it's not all, it's not, you don't actually just need the internet, right?
That's true, but...
It's the currency of space now with your satellite.
Yes, but we're... Like, one of the design decisions in Bitcoin is that the participants in it with censorship rights, which we call miners, should be a permissionless set. Like anyone should be able to that is Bitcoin's answer to the need for a decision party to like, and any sort of distributed system needs a way to tie break between conflicting transactions, and there can be a central party, or you can have like time-based systems or whatever if you add assumptions, or you have a set of like you have a federation where a supermajority needs to sign off. But Bitcoin instead does not pick a fixed set of trusted parties. Instead, it defines this group of miners that anyone can join. Like you literally don't have to talk to anyone to become a miner. There may be economic reasons why that's not that easy, and this is unfortunate, but still, you can mine anonymously, and like that's the whole point. If it wasn't possible to mine anonymously, then that kind of design has failed, and unfortunately, this brings in some restrictions, because when you mine, you want to be close enough in terms of propagation delay to other miners. You can't, if you're too far away, you're going to be disadvantaged, because the rate of block production is a Poisson distributed process, so it's actually quite likely to have very short blocks, or the time between two blocks is occasionally very low, in the order of seconds. Happens all the time. So if block B comes 2 seconds after block A, but the miner who finds block B is more than 2 seconds of delay after the miner who created, the one who created B is more than 2 seconds away from the one who created A, then clearly these blocks are going to conflict rather than build on top of each other. And this is a waste. This is a waste for that miner in terms of their hash rate has now been wasted for the time they were working on a block they didn't know about. But it's also a loss of security for the network, because those if say 5% of all hash rate in general is being spent on not knowing the last block actually yet, that actually gives a direct 5% cost reduction to a 51% attacker, because a 51% attacker only builds on top of his own blocks where there is no delay. So all of this, what I'm getting at is, you really can't mine from space.
Right. Yet.
So, well, unless you introduce superluminal communication speed or something. But inherently, the 10-minute block delay puts in practice a limit on how far away from each other miners can be.
Right, so we can't be mining on Mars.
Correct.
But in couple hundred years, the next Pieter Well, I forgot it already.
Wuille.
The next Pieter Wuille will have to be working on a BIP to propagate between planets.
Yeah, but the physics doesn't allow, I mean, at least our current understanding of physics doesn't allow communication faster than the speed of light. So,
but have you even thought about that? Like what you would do? You know, just say we have a moon base and we want Bitcoin on the moon. Like, have you thought about how we do it?
The moon isn't that far away yet. I think
So we can
communication back and forth to the moon is like, what, 2 seconds? So that's probably still doable, though. That's already a non-trivial disadvantage.
But we could send Bitcoin back and forth, say, to Mars, but perhaps not mine in both locations.
Yes, that's
Propagation's
right.
the problem.
Oh, sure, if you... Yeah.
But if someone did, just say, hypothetically, if someone started mining on Mars, would that cause a whole bunch of problems on the network? that you couldn't stop them from causing
Well,
if they solved a block?
so unless there is a very large portion of the hash rate there immediately, they're going to be severely disadvantaged. So it probably just wouldn't happen. But if I am right, time to Mars and back would be, well, depending on where Mars is, of course, but that's going to be in the several minutes, huh?
Yeah.
That, like, if say there was actually 50% of the hash rate on Earth and 50% of the hash rate on Mars, like that would be really bad for the network, because we'd see big chains of orphans, like, because I don't know, if we're badly positioned and it's more than a couple minutes apart, then you're gonna have a series of block found on one, and at the same time a series of block on the other, and they just haven't heard about each other. So this would reduce the meaning of confirmations.
Right.
You'd need much longer confirmation times.
All right, so it's probably not a problem for a few decades,
Yeah.
a couple hundred years maybe.
Yeah, possibly we have bigger problems then.
Yeah, bigger problems than that. All right, so is Bitcoin, is it for everyone? Is it for everyone on the planet? Is it for all 7 billion people? Will all 7 billion people be able to use it?
I hope one day it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd very much like it.
That's the goal.
Well, everyone's goal can be different, but I think to the extent that it's trying to be a neutral form of money that isn't subject to banking decisions, I'd like as many people as possible to benefit from that.
And what are the key steps to that? Ignoring kind of like marketing and adoption and
Sure,
rollout.
sure.
Like technically, is this primarily on Lightning?
I don't like to think of Lightning as a silver bullet, because it's certainly an amazing innovation, and I think it has, like, the invention of technology like this, I think, has changed my perspective on what is possible with Bitcoin. But that doesn't mean that I expect Lightning itself to be the one thing that will bring it to everyone on Earth. Like there will be other developments of similar or very different kinds, but just the fact that technology was invented that introduces such wildly different trade-offs without really giving up any of the essential properties is an enormous innovation. But we also shouldn't bet everything on one technology, right? There will be more things that people invent, and that's great. And
have you worked much on Lightning at all?
not at all.
You've not
I
worked on
don't
it at all?
really know how it works.
You don't know how it works. That's surprising and interesting. Have you used it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I passed the lightning torch so I had to set up a node and everything.
There you go.
Yeah, it was a very, very educational experience, I'd say. But
Do you remember who you sent your torch to?
yeah, Alexander Leishman, who runs the Socratic seminar at as of Bitcoin Devs.
Oh, interesting. I did mine on a plane to
Nice.
somebody else on a plane.
Nice.
We went from plane to plane.
Yeah, I found it a very interesting initiative. It was like a way to get a whole bunch of people involved and excited. I think it probably actually showed some of the limits of the technology and like routing problems that appeared, and not so much about like things that developers learned, but wider community learned. But Yeah, no,
But you'll just focus on the base chain then.
yeah, exactly.
I guess there's enough to do there, right?
There's already so much to do there, and I already have not enough time to do all the things I want to do.
Well,
so.
appreciate you making some time for me then.
You're
Like,
welcome.
there's a couple other things I did want to ask you about though. Obviously, you announced a couple of months back now 2 bips for Taproot and Schnorr.
Yep.
How's that all going?
Pretty well. My impression is that a lot of people are excited and just want to see it happen. I haven't heard much criticism at all about the decision, whether we wanted it or not, which is encouraging. There's been a bit of feedback and some ideas about improvements. I plan to cycle back to those things soon, make some adjustments, and yeah, I expect it to happen.
How are decisions made? Like, when you say you've had some feedback, how do you choose who to listen to, who to ignore? Is it just personal choice?
Yes and no. Like, ultimately, this is a proposal, and it's a proposal from a few people. Like, we worked on this proposal with, and at some point the decision will be up to the community whether to accept the proposal or not, and that's of course a vague thing, right?
Of course.
But
It's not controversial like SegWit.
well, no, at least from what I've seen, not at all, which I found a bit surprising, actually. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff in there, but no, I expect it to happen, though I don't want to speak for...
Yeah. What other stuff are you working on? So obviously we've got I mean, it's quite a lot, right? So you've got your mini script, you've got Taproot, you've got Mast, you've got Schnorr. Anything else?
Well, so Schnorr, Mast, and Taproot
It's
are
all in
all
one.
integrated in one proposal. Yeah, I think those Miniscript, and I'm also thinking about things what after
Yeah.
Taproot.
What's coming? Come on. What do you really want to do?
So we have some ideas about how to generalize Taproot. Anthony Towns came up with Gurroot, which is a generalized Taproot that lets you do some of the things it does, but generalizes them. Of course, there's the big thing, cross-input signature aggregation. So this has been a bit of an unfortunate sequence of events where the primary thing that got me excited about doing Schnorr signatures was the fact that they permit things like cross-input aggregation, and it's actually not quite Schnorr. You need a bit more advanced scheme, but still, the idea of being able to reduce the total number of signatures in a transaction to 1, regardless of the complexity or size of the transaction, was really appealing. But then, as we got into development and like, I see myself more as an applied cryptographer than a theoretical cryptographer. So as we learned more and more and talked to people who actually know what they're talking about these things, we learned that there's a whole bunch of pitfalls and also engineering challenges in doing this. And then Taproot came along, and Taproot is really cool on its own. It's this like in short, it means every output will look identical, so you won't have P2SH and P2 pubkey hash things anymore. There's just one type of output, and as long as you don't reuse keys, they will all look indistinguishably random from each other. And then every Taproot output can also be spent with a single key, but due to Schnorr, that single key can actually represent multiple keys at the same time, and all of those also look identical. So you can't tell anymore when a Taproot output is spent, and it is spent cooperatively, so where most or all of the participants just agreed to spend it, you never reveal what the actual script was on the chain. And I think this is a really great like fungibility improvement, because now you don't leak on the network anymore what kind of software you're using, or there's Awesome Wallet, which has a 4 of 7 multisig, and it's the only service that has 4 of 7 multisig. Well, you can't tell anymore now on the chain in most cases that a particular output was from Awesome Wallet. So that's that's a really exciting idea on its own. So we focused on that for BIP Taproot and set the cross-input aggregation aside. But obviously the cross-input aggregation has to happen sometime. So with generalizing Taproot, that seems like it actually becomes easier. So that's something I'm excited about. But, that's steps ahead.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever think we'll get to full anonymity in Bitcoin? And do you think that's even a good thing?
I think it would be a good thing, but
because not everyone does.
All other things aside, it would be a good thing. But it seems that in practice, even ignoring how to integrate it in Bitcoin, but all technologies that enable it come with serious drawbacks at the same time. Like, they come with either a trusted setup, or they come with ever-growing data sets. Like, Bitcoin has a UTXO set, and if the number of UTXOs goes down over time, then the size of the UTXO set goes down as well. But in designs where you can't see exactly which coin is being spent by which input, you can't delete the old coin. And instead, many of these things work with this is true for Zcash and Monero, for example. They work with a set of spent coins rather than a set of unspent coins. Unfortunately, the set of spent coins is always growing, so that's a drawback. Like there's computational costs, there's bandwidth costs that are involved. I think that if you disregard these ever-growing data sets, the best I know that we can do is confidential transactions, but which really just hide the amounts involved. But even there are serious challenges in bringing it to Bitcoin, because they're much larger, and there are questions about like auditability. This seems something that many Bitcoiners care deeply about. Like, you can just sum all the values in your UTXO set and see it's less than 21 million. And if you that is of course the system is designed such that this limit cannot be exceeded, but even if there was a bug in all the logic that prevents this, you can still see it hasn't happened. And if you make this logic more complicated, as it is with confidential transactions, even if you pick a design where it is theoretically guaranteed that it is impossible to inflate, if there's a bug in this logic, you can't tell anymore.
Uh-huh. That's the main argument against it, I've heard.
It's one of them, but so another one is a big question in confidential transactions is that there is this principle in that's very foundational, that because you need some form of zero knowledge proof where you need to prove to the network that your transaction is valid, and these proofs have two properties that you try to achieve. A is that someone cannot create a proof unless the statement is actually true, which is called soundness. And the other is of course, the zero knowledge part of it. It is, are you not revealing anything more than the statement? And there's this very fundamental property that you cannot make both of them perfect at the same time. So you can design a system that, if the cryptographic assumptions underlying it break down, either because elliptic curves are broken or a quantum computer comes along that of sufficient size and whatever. There are always assumptions you make, and if those assumptions are broken, you can choose a design where either the privacy breaks down or the soundness breaks down, but you cannot have something where neither breaks down. So it's a question, okay, say everybody wants confidential transactions and we're fine with computational trade-offs and whatever. Which one do you pick? And I've heard good arguments for both. Like, one of them is, well, our inflation limit in Bitcoin is such an important constitution-like thing for Bitcoin that we cannot permit even a break of the elliptic curve discrete logarithm problem to change that. And thus we have to pick a design that is unconditionally sound.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, there's the argument that, well, if you're doing that and that implies privacy is broken, but not just the privacy in the future is broken, but of all past transactions, they get retroactively de-anonymized as well. And maybe that is a worse scenario than just saying, well, if our assumption breaks down, we're done for anyway, we need to move to a different system, and it would be better to prefer than something where the past isn't de-anonymized, so instead you should pick unconditional privacy. And I don't know, these are hard questions. I don't have an answer.
Not today.
Not today.
Maybe the future. All right, well, listen, I'm conscious of time, and I'm conscious how busy you are. We did our hour, so I thank you for doing this. I appreciate you allowing me to come over here.
Oh,
welcome. I also need to pick up my core check that I get every month for supporting Bitcoin Core over Bitcoin Cash. So. But no, thank you, Peter. This has been great. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
How do people follow your work? What you're doing? How do they follow you?
I don't know. Maybe you know better than I do.
Well, usually this is the point where you go, follow me on Twitter. I'm here.
Oh.
This is your chance.
On GitHub and on Twitter.
I'll share that out in the show notes. Do you want to say a quick hello? Do you want to come on and say a quick hello? Ask her a couple of questions?
Sure.
Yeah? Do you want to jump over the other side? While you're here. Have we met before?
No,
We haven't met.
no.
Are you the intern?
Yes, I'm the intern.
How long you been here?
I've been here for about 2 months now.
Okay.
I'm Sankit. I'm working on Peter on Miniscript.
Okay.
Peter and Andrew. So, yes.
Are you from India?
Yeah, I'm from India.
Yeah, I can pick the accent out. Did you come here for this, or were you here already?
No, I'm a student at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and yeah, I'm here for after my first year is my internship, so I go back to school
Okay.
again this fall.
So how long are you here for? Like just the summer?
Yes,
Okay.
maybe 1 moment. Yeah.
And how did you discover the internship?
I mean, I was aware of Bitcoin
course.
related stuff, so I mean, I knew this place existed, and some of my friends work at Blockstream, so I mean, they referred me. So
that was pretty cool to come and work here.
yes, of course,
Then.
I'm
Look at you.
enjoying it. Yeah.
You're loving it, are you?
Yes, I get to hang out with Peter every day. We discuss several awesome things.
Okay. And all the other people coming in and out.
Yes.
You get to do your first podcast interview.
Yeah. I get to do my first podcast interview.
And how's it working on Miniscript?
So it's back and forth. We come up with something and then we undo it again. Then we come up with something again. Then we undo it again. But every time it gets better. We come every day, whiteboard something, scrap some ideas, go out again. The cool part is, as Peter mentioned, that we don't have any, compared to my university or other job settings, we don't have any set deadlines. So the quality of work, as I see, has
Much
improved
better.
significantly over the last couple of months.
And were you doing work on Bitcoin before you came here?
I mean, I did not. So my thesis is on my master's. I work with Andrew Miller, who is again a professor who was a bit he is Zcash Foundation
Okay.
guy. So yeah, and he's also friends with Andrew Postra and Peter. So he kind of referred me here, and
Okay.
I'm working on Lightning related things or some other cryptocurrency projects over there.
You've been working on Lightning as well. Peter
kind
doesn't
of-
do that.
Yeah, I mean, kind of playing around with things. I mean, Peter knows a lot about Lightning. He just doesn't.
I know, he's pretty cool. You can see in your face how much you're loving this. Is it actually going to suck to go back to college afterwards? Or
Yes, it's gonna suck.
It's going to suck.
Yes, I mean, I'm enjoying it. So like I look forward to it every like lunch or dinner I
Yeah.
have with Peter. We are discussing some new ideas.
I mean, I'm not going to list all the technology people who dropped out halfway through their university to build things.
I just have one more year to go. Hopefully, I complete it.
No, you should. You should definitely. I'm only teasing. So one more year to go, and then what? Hopefully back here.
Yeah, let's see.
Bitcoin's for you, though, right? Why? Why do you care about? What's the deal with Bitcoin for you? Why do you love it?
It's hard to pinpoint something. It's just like something I've found interesting, and like I don't have any philosophical or any good answer to behind it. It's just something which like I discovered quite late. Like I suppose everybody is like somewhat new here. I got like late 2016, 17, and I had some interest in cryptography, so I started diving into it. And some of the culture, the politics, and I just felt one way down the other. And yeah, it's
just cool.
Yeah, it's just cool. Like I don't have any libertarian or philosophical reason to side, but yeah, it's just cool, and I want to know more about it, and so I just started going into it.
I always think that's the best answer. It is just cool.
Yeah.
The fact that you can just send money around like that is cool. The fact that money has come from nothing is just cool. Well, listen, great to meet you. Good luck with this, man. Like,
thank you.
I expect maybe in a year or so you'll be coming back on the podcast in your own right, telling me about your work, and we'll see, man. Well, take care. Good luck with it. All right. What did you think of that? How cool was it to get Peter on the show? I think the things he's working on are really interesting, and I obviously don't understand a lot of it, but it's cool to hear the perspective of one of the people who's really shaping the future of Bitcoin. I was actually surprised to hear from him that he doesn't know how Lightning works too, but I'm going to call bullshit. I'm going to call BS on that one. I think he's being too modest. I reckon he does. As always, I love hearing about the early days of Bitcoin. I love the cypherpunk side of it, and it's just crazy to think of all the people who were mining Bitcoin in the early days on their computers and the amount of Bitcoin they were mining. And it's even crazier to think that they, similar to Peter, were probably selling thousands of them for like less than $1. Damn. That puts my crappy trading history into perspective. But yeah, I can't wait to see what happens with the things that Peter is working on now. I know Taproot is important. I know how important Schnorr is. They're coming soon, hopefully. And if you haven't listened to my show with Andrew Polstra talking about Taproot and Schnorr signatures, definitely go and check that out. That was a very cool episode. And yeah, it was just really great to sit down with one of the most key Bitcoin devs and find out what they're envisaging for the future. So yes, huge thank you for Peter for doing this, for allowing me to come and interview him. Really, really enjoyed it. Really proud to have him on the show. And also, thanks to you guys. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it too. If you've got any feedback, just email me. It's hello@whatbitcoindid.com. Also, massive thanks to everyone who supports the show. I try and say this as often as I can. Whether you write to me, whether you DM, you leave me a review, whatever you do, if you do something, it really helps. If you've been listening to the show loads and you've never done anything, come and help me out. Go and leave me a review on iTunes. Click on that subscribe button. And if you want to, you can become a subscriber. Head over to Patreon. It's patreon.com/whatbitcoindid. You can subscribe to an ad-free version of the show. If you don't want to use Patreon, you can use Bitcoin. You can use Lightning. Just email me. We'll figure that out. There's also a bunch of other stuff you can do, but you can find that all out on my website. It's whatbitcoindid.com. Click on the sports section. And as I said on the intro, I'm off on holiday now. I'm leaving for the airport in a couple of hours. But feel free to get in touch. I might take a little bit longer to respond to you than normal, but I do have loads of shows ready to get out to you. So hopefully by the time you all listen to this, I'm going to be sat by the pool, having a cold beer, relaxing, taking a well-needed break. But listen, thanks to everyone who supports the show, but I do need a holiday. All right, take care. Have a great week.